Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and I just I just finished watching the debate. I went back on the NBC live stream and just went to the beginning and muted everything. And I almost want to say that was a waste of time. And I wish I had had a few of those before before I had watched the debate, because it would have made it a lot more entertaining, I think. The truth is, none of these candidates impressed me. I will give credit where credit's due. John Delaney actually sounded like he came prepared and didn't just want to bash Trump or push a hyper far left agenda. Seriously, we had two candidates seriously argue for abolishing private health insurance, which I will give them credit because they want a government system. They're at least being honest that they're going to get rid of private health insurance, because you can't have a government system, a single payer system, while also maintaining private insurance. Because if people have a choice, they're not going to choose the government option. Because the government option, by definition, is going to have to fit to a bunch of arcane, weird language, and is always going to be less efficient, is always going to be the worst possible care because they have to go to the lowest bidder. A great analogy would be assembling a rocket to go to the moon, because it was, the Apollo program, because it was assembled by the government. All the astronauts in the Apollo program like to joke that their rocket was assembled by parts produced from the lowest bidder, aka the person who offered to do it for the least amount of money. So, yeah, that's not a good idea. I'm going to skip over a lot of the typical Democratic campaign fodder, the abortion issues, the gun stuff. Actually, no, I'm going to talk about the gun stuff because that was a bit worrying too. They offered, they called them buybacks, but that's basically code these days, at least amongst Democrats, for what they did in Australia. Most of them advocate for a system like Australia. And when they say weapons of war, they're a bunch of idiots, because a longbow is a weapon of war. Seriously. I could take a longbow into a war zone and use it. That makes it a weapon of war. What else is a weapon of war? Let's see. I could take... It's not that hard to make. I could make napalm if I wanted. It's really not that hard. With a little bit of know-how, I can make smokeless powder in my, in my office right here. There's a lot of stuff I could do if I really wanted to that would make a weapon of war. But what they're trying to say is a scary assault weapon, a so-called assault weapon. I don't like that language. I call them modern sporting rifles, because that's exactly what they are. And what people don't realize is that really the only thing a modern sporting rifle is a 22 caliber rifle. At least in the most common variants. We're talking about a 22 caliber rifle that just has a ton more powder behind that 22 round. Most common use of a 22 round is for what's called plinking. And what plinking is you take a bunch of beer cans out into the woods, and you shoot them for 4 or 5 hours until there's no can left to shoot. The other prominent caliber is 7.62, which is roughly about 30 caliber, and it's got about the same amount of powder. So really what we're talking about is deer hunting rounds. 22 is probably better for smaller deer, maybe rams out if you're out west. I could probably, yeah, I would probably use a 22 for, well, maybe not a 22 long rifle, but 223 for, or 5.56 if we're going metric system here. I would probably use that for deer hunting. Though I prefer 30-30, it's just a little bit more effective. And the rifle that I have that fires 30-30 is it's a little bit more easy to maneuver when I'm out and about in the woods. So yeah, there's that. Trying to think. So really, it's just a misnomer. They're just afraid of the pistol grip and the retractable stocks and the carry handle sights and the Picatinny rails. They're not actually concerned about the functionality or what it actually is capable of. Typically, you could actually hunt with an AR-15. Some people do. Personally, I don't think it's the ideal rifle for it, mostly because of the ergonomics. I'd much prefer a lever gun, but I don't see any real problem with using an AR if you're so inclined, or an AK. Though I think the Kalashnikov is... I think it's too communist for me. I'm kind of joking here. The Kalashnikov is a fine rifle. Actually, it's probably better than the AR, simply because it has much looser tolerances. If you pick up an AR versus a Kalashnikov and you shake the two of them, the Kalashnikov rattles like a baby with a little shaker thing. The AR is pretty tight. It's kind of the difference that you get between a Glock and a 1911. And I'm a fan of the 1911, by the way. But a Glock will sound like it's going to fall apart. A 1911, you can't tell. You can barely tell that it has moving parts when you shake it. So, and that's why people think that Glocks are more reliable than 1911s. However, in common practice, a 1911 is going to be just as reliable, provided you take reasonable care of it. A Glock, sure, you can abuse the crap out of it, but that's ridiculous to say that you're gonna abuse it in everyday use. Anyway, moving on to other issues that they talked about. Foreign involvements, specifically foreign policy. I think Tulsi Gabbard won that area, because she's the only person who actually knows about foreign policy, partially because of her military service career and partially because of her experience as a legislator. I would argue that Tulsi is probably the best of the Democrats who we saw tonight, and probably the best Democrat that you're going to see across the two nights. Now, this is from my perspective. I am not a Republican. I consider myself a libertarian, which in the United States means classical liberal. If you're one of my foreign viewers, understand that I'm not a flag-waving socialist. I mean, I am a Rush fan after all. And Rush is not known for their socialist stances. Slight joking there. Rush don't want their music used or their ideals used in any political manner, and I intend to maintain that. But they do have a noticeable anti-authoritarian streak. And we have to admit that in practice, socialism tends to be authoritarian. Just look at Joseph Stalin, Vladimir Lenin, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh, trying to think of a few others, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, again, off the top of my head. Yeah. Now, that's not to say that right-wing policies can't produce dictators. Augusto Pinochet being the best example. Hitler wasn't right or left. He had some right-wing beliefs, he had some left-wing beliefs, but his primary focus was on nationalism, which is considered a right-wing belief, and fair enough on that accord. It seemed like this was a debate where they were trying to out-left-wing each other, with a few minor exceptions. Tim Ryan tried to argue that he was the type of person who could appeal to Obama-Trump voters. Same thing with John Delaney, actually. And I'd argue John Delaney did it better because he at least tried to argue that he wanted to work with Republicans. I'm somewhat skeptical, but not entirely skeptical of that claim. Tulsi Gabbard made some good, speaking of Tulsi, she made some good arguments on her behalf. I think she did a decent amount to boost her claim, but I think the media is just going to claim that Warren won. Warren and Booker were the two who made the most impact in this debate, but that's because they were the two most notable faces. Jay Inslee is the generic governor who's going to be featured in every primary debate here. I'm trying to think of anyone else who made waves. Bill de Blasio is a, pardon the expression, but a Charlie Umbrella November Tango. And now I want to get to something that I really felt was a bit disingenuous, and that was the pandering of the people on stage who knew at least some phrases in Spanish. Now, personally, I actually understood everything they said in Spanish, and not because they said it immediately before or after what they said in Spanish. No, while I don't consider myself an Español hablante, I do understand a healthy amount of the language. Enough to make a joke or two when I'm sitting with some of my friends. I also know enough to order a beer in a restaurant and where to ask for the bathroom so I can, relieve the beer. Más cervezas y que es donde es el baño. But no, the Spanish was complete pandering. I don't see it as anything other than that. The Democrats are going to get about 70% of the Latino vote anyway, so I really don't see the point in them trying to play up that they are the party that Latinos should vote for, because Latinos are going to vote for them anyway. The only way that helps them is maybe a tiny bit with the Cuban population in Florida, and maybe a tiny bit with the Hispanic population in Texas, which, for the most part, considers itself white. So, no, I don't honestly think that it helped them. I don't think that it hurt them. It was just pointless, is what I'm trying to say. And that's not coming from an Anglophone, I try to get I try to be at least semi-knowledgeable in more than just English. That way, if I hear something someone says in a foreign language, I can know, oh, hey, that was nice, or, oh, they just insulted me. So, I know bits and pieces of German, I know bits and pieces of French. I'm better at Spanish than maybe I give myself credit for, and I don't give myself any credit. I could maybe survive in Europe if I had to. I could almost definitely survive in Holland. And by Holland, I mean the Netherlands. I know the entire nation isn't actually Holland, though their tourism website is holland.com, I think, or holland.gov, whatever. Anyway, so Inslee's biggest issue was climate change. Warren seemed to be too educated, too elitist. And I noticed something. With the exception of a handful of candidates, they were all from extremely large liberal coastal states. You had Bill de Blasio. You had Jay Inslee. You have... I'm trying to remember what they're... Elizabeth Warren, obviously. Tulsi Gabbard, as much as she's probably the most palatable here for anyone who isn't a Democrat. John Delaney, though, he gets a little bit of pass because he didn't represent the Baltimore part of his state. He represented the other one. That's 5 of them. Booker's from New Jersey. But O'Rourke, Tim Ryan, Klobuchar, and Julian Castro are all from flyover country. So I'm going to give them credit where credit's due. They're from parts of the nation where they have to deal with Trump voters on a regular basis and Republicans on a regular basis. So they were to a degree, the voices of reason. I'm going to actually state that Julian Castro was not a voice of reason. O'Rourke was a bit of a voice of reason, especially with his answer on what would you do. How would you communicate to voters who agree with you on everything else but won't vote for you because of your beliefs on guns? He at least attempted, that question. Klobuchar, again, attempted it, and she's, I think, too Minnesota nice to admit that she's closer to the standard Democrat on guns than anyone else. And I know or everything else, I guess. Though she is much more moderate than some of the others. Tim Ryan is almost the old school unionist who is basically a socialist but doesn't want to admit it. Is just saying, no, I'm just focused on economics. I don't want to actually implement some of this cultural stuff that the rest of them are talking about. O'Rourke he is passed from a rising star to a has-been, basically in the time it takes Thanos to snap his thumb. I really don't think that he's going to progress much further. His candle burnt out fast. Oh my god. Yeah, we're already at the part where they're talking about healthcare and universal healthcare and banning basically anything that isn't private insurance. A lot of people are trying to argue that you can keep private insurance, but anyway, that's a philosophical thing. Anything else that I can think of off the top of my head? I didn't take any notes on this debate because I didn't think it was necessary, considering this is the JV squad. I guess I should note that Tulsi Gabbard, at least image-wise, made the best appearance because she was the only one who was wearing something different than the rest of them. Because she was the only one who didn't wear a black sport coat or sport jacket, as it were. And I know my attire isn't exactly perfect, but dark color, I guess, because I just noticed, I think that was Inslee who was wearing a blue sport jacket. She wore a red, it's a red cardigan, I guess. Of course, Warren wore purple for whatever reason, which doesn't make it... Well, I have to give her credit. It's different, but it's still a dark color. Though... maybe. Then again, I know my attire isn't exactly professional right now. Then again, I'd probably wear plaid if I were running for president or office because I like plaid. Plaid is a color. No, I seriously would wear plaid though. Like I would see if I could get a sport jacket in green plaid. Uh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so my belief is basically that this debate was what my parents always told me was a Charlie Foxtrot, and that's just military code for C and F. And I'll let you guess what those two what those two letters combined mean down in the comments below. It's similar to a Sierra November Alpha Foxtrot umbrella, which is basically to say that it's Foxtrot umbrella Bravo Alpha Romeo. If anybody actually knows the NATO phonetic alphabet, go ahead and type out those acronyms down in the comments, and then explain what those acronyms actually mean. Anyway, the other thing was that basically there were points when every single one of those Democrats was being a blue falcon to somebody else in the debate, which was absolutely hilarious. So yeah, this was a gigantic mess, and if tomorrow's going to be basically the same thing because Biden's going to try and present himself as a moderate. You're going to have Bernie Sanders calling him out as too corporate. You're going to have Buttigieg being Buttigieg Lord, and you're probably going to have Kamala Harris trying to hide her past as a tough on crime prosecutor from California. And I don't know why I just did that as a joke. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get some rest now. Take it easy, y'all. Have a nice day. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry about the late upload. Bye.